no error. No errors.
Woohoo.
That seemed to work. All right. I'll give it just a second. Because that'll take our members just a minute to find us now.
Right. Be like, what's happening?
I know.
No,
I'm
because
surprised I'm not getting texts.
I know. Well, the kids aren't screaming anymore, so it was for the best. You
It's
know,
all good.
my
I
son
totally get it.
next to me to like help contain any other outbreaks.
Mm. How old are your children?
My son is 8, and then I have twin 4-year-old girls. So,
Oh, fun. So is your son in third grade?
yeah, yeah.
Third grade teacher. I
Lots
know
of,
all about the
oh my
8-year-olds.
goodness, it's quite an
Yeah.
age. It's
It is.
God.
It is.
It's funny. We had our parent teacher conferences today, and I was just saying to his teacher,
Oh,
I was like, "You are like third grade teachers are saints because it's like they're just trying to figure out. It's like they're really on that cusp of like they're not rude people like miserable teenagers yet, but they're starting to have those feelings. It's like
totally. They totally are. So, for everybody just coming on, hey, everyone. So, I'm Kristen if you're new. I'm one of the admins for Bookish Pen Pals. I know we have a whole bunch of new members, and I'm on with Ali Rosen. I'm super excited. Welcome to our little group.
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for dealing with our Facebook technical issues.
I love it. You don't relive all of this every day. Hey.
Yeah. So Allie and I were just talking about children because she has an 8-year-old, and of course I teach third grade, so I know all about that whole kid thing. So I'm just going to give everybody a couple minutes to come on. If you're just joining us, I'm super excited about this because Jamie said, "Kristen, you have to talk to her. You have to read this book." And I was like, "It's romance, Jamie." And then I read the book and I loved it. And then of course I have a whole cooking journey and I've been struggling. And so then I saw Allie's cookbook. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too, because I've actually tried a couple things and then I have some questions. So,
Get into
um,
all of it. The romance, the cooking, my favorite topics.
oh, and the travel, like I just wanted to jump into the book and be there because like, I read it in 24 hours, by the way.
Good.
Um,
It's the best. I feel
so
like anytime you have those books that just fully suck you in, it's there's no
yeah.
as a reader, like there's nothing that I love more than being like, everyone leave me alone. I have to finish this book. I love it so much. So
Yeah, it's a blast, and I usually have 3 or 4 going on at once, and I was like, "Yeah, no, I need to get back to Italy right now. I need to see what's going on with Stella."
3 or 4 at once. I can't. I mean, I'm like an obsessive. Like once I'm like in something, I can't. I can't look at anything else. It's hard for me.
Yeah.
I'm a one book at a time gal.
I think maybe that has to do with teaching, like, it's this multitasking juggle, you know?
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, by the time I get home, I don't wanna cook, um,
Yeah.
and I was cooking for a very long time for my kids, and I lost 85 pounds doing keto during COVID, and I cooked all the time, and so now I'm really burnt out about it. So anytime I, like, can find some new recipes, and I'm I'm sometimes intimidated about ingredients, so I'm gonna talk to you about that too, and you know,
Yeah.
I keep telling my girlfriend, I got to get back on the cooking train here. So, because
Yeah.
I used to do it all the time. But
I think we
I
all
knew,
go through waves and phases, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard, especially when you have you're balancing. It's very hard to sort of come up with a routine. I mean, it's kind of like exercising or any other habit. We go in ebbs and flows, and I think it's okay to have some periods of your life where you're just like, I can't do this right now. But that was, yeah, my
yeah,
most recent cookbook is 15-minute meals, and I mean that really came from me and COVID, and just being like, I do not have the energy to fully cook 3 meals a day. Like I cannot handle
right.
this. And so, I think we all go through these moments, and I've been lucky that sort of those ebb and flow moments have inspired books. My book before that was about freezer food. So there was a time where I
Right.
was like, I'm going to spend Sundays and I'm going to cook everything and I'm going to get it all ready, and I think, yeah, we all go through cooking phases and
And
reading phases.
we truly do. And I was going to talk about the book first, but I think we're going to talk about cooking first. Um, so, I looked at the freezer. I always want to meal prep on Sundays. like that's
Yeah.
my thing. And then the freezer is intimidating because you make this wonderful food and you portion it out and you stick it in the freezer and you pull it back out and it turns to mush, and or it's all icy, and I'm like, well, I don't want to eat that, and then
Right.
I throw it out.
Right. You spent all
So,
this time making it. I mean, that was the biggest thing for me with that book, was really like the whole first chapter is really about like setting the stage for all of those things, because you can make the greatest thing in the world, and if you don't freeze it properly, then it's exactly that. It's just like a
yeah,
giant block of frozen junk, So it's
right,
really about freezing in individual portions. It's about, getting containers that freeze things properly, because kind of air is the enemy of all freezer food.
right,
So, yeah, I mean, my goal was really, right, like, how do we make things that you can freeze? And I found that a lot of things that I sort of thought like, oh, I'm going to test this and see if it works. As long as it was stored properly, like with the right container and in the right portion size, I was kind of amazed
right.
at what you could freeze. Cause I'm the same way. Like, I'm the laziest cook. Like, that's all of my cookbooks have come from like me wanting to spend less time cooking, but having like,
Right.
wanting it to taste good. So, um, yeah. So, I mean, modern freezer meals really came out of that. And I mean, that's kind of been like, there's nothing in the book is defrosted. It's all like you get home and you want to pull something out, and it's like, do you microwave it? Do you put it in the oven? But it's not like, oh, I
Right.
have to think about this in the morning and then
Yeah.
shove it in. I mean,
Yeah, I'm
who has
super
time for that?
excited about that. So I just recently watched your it was a TV segment with the crab cakes and
Yeah.
how you can freeze them. That is like my jam. I love seafood. I don't like when it gets freezer burn, and I love crab cakes. And what I loved about that recipe is that it didn't have a whole ton of panko or breadcrumbs in it. Because as a
Oh my
diabetic, I'm really concerned about that.
It's like, if you're gonna
And
do it, just do it right. I
yeah,
found that crab cakes are one of the few things that actually are better when frozen. Like, I would say that most
right,
things you feel like you're losing something, and there are a few things where, I mean, I feel this way about cookies also, if you like freeze cookie dough, because of the way that it bakes out. But yeah, because you
yeah,
fry, a crab cake, you get
yeah,
that like crispy exterior with the like sort of just delightfully soft interior. And because most crab that you buy is pre-cooked, you're not really worried about, are you
right.
cooking it enough? So it actually does
Yeah.
better from the freezer, which is sort of
And
how I
I've
feel
always
about
been
that
kind of
bread.
intimidated about those,
Yeah.
like I looked at crab cakes and I'm like, I can't, like, that's fancy. And
But
then
it's
I watched it and
so
I'm like, but it's really not fancy.
I mean, you just buy, I mean, honestly, like, I'm a big Costco person. I mean, I buy like Kirkland, like the Kirkland
Yeah.
giant, just like bucket of crab. I mean,
Yeah.
really, I
Yeah.
mean, it like couldn't be. And
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, crab is so expensive," and I'm like, it's actually the easiest thing, because it's already
Right.
cooked. It's so flavorful. You can put it in fried rice. You can put it in tacos, and it lasts like the way that you buy it. Like, I mean, I think I just bought some, and it's like it's good until May. I mean, because it's sealed
Yeah.
properly. So yeah, that's my ad for Costco.
So can we air fry those crab cakes instead of frying them? Would they come
Oh
out the
yeah.
same?
Oh, I mean, I'm a big air fryer proponent.
Me too. I feel like that takes like some of the things out. So someone in the chat said, "Wait, more than one cookbook?" So
Yeah.
do you want to tell us about your cookbook? So I've jumped like right on in without any real introduction here because I'm so excited about it. I grew up with my mom who has got French in her, so she's always cooking, and my second mom was always cooking, and I kind of watched them. But so tell us about your cookbooks.
Yes, I have 3 cookbooks. My first cookbook was called Bring It. It's all about food that you can make ahead, either for potlucks or picnics, or just, again, if you want to make things ahead that do well. My second book is called Modern Freezer Meals, which is kind of what we've been talking about,
Yeah.
foods to do in advance and put in the freezer. And my most recent cookbook is called 15-Minute Meals, which is all about like start to finish, like not like 15 minutes of prep, but really like how can you get food on the table, like start to finish in 15 minutes. So yeah, so my books, yeah, really are like the intersection of like laziness and trying to have things be delicious is my niche.
And yeah, and there's some fabulous ingredients too. Like I was thumbing through it and I'm like, "Oh, how do what?" I
And I
that
do
like
this.
like
Well, Yeah, 15-minute meals, it's been interesting. I mean, the inspiration for 15-minute meals was really this realization that we live in a world now where our access to ingredients is just incredible. I mean, no matter where you live, even if you live in the most rural place where you would say to yourself, I can't get this. I mean, Amazon, it's like you can buy fish sauce and tamarind paste and miso sauce on Amazon and have it to, shipped to you in 2 days. And so it's interesting. I mean, the people who don't like 15-minute meals, that is their complaint of like, I can't get these ingredients. And I'm like, but these are such powerhouse ingredients. And especially when you think about things that have been fermented or salted, they add so much flavor without having to caramelize an onion or, simmer a sauce for 4 hours. So, I mean, we are really living in this age of the quality of canned and frozen ingredients has just skyrocketed. And so the ability, if you get frozen vegetables, they're often fresher than whatever's been sitting in your produce section because they were flash frozen. I mean, what we grew up with, the flash freezing made them mushy and terrible. Now freezing technology has advanced, the seafood, canned and tinned seafood, you can buy like sustainable, like packed in olive oil, tinned seafood that is very different than the like star-kissed tuna we all grew up with, so the world has really changed. And because of that, you can get such excellent high quality ingredients no matter where you live. You don't have, I mean, I live in New York, so okay, like I can, there are specialty grocery stores, but I grew up in South Carolina. Like now, I mean, listen, like my parents' local grocery store has all those ingredients I mentioned, miso paste, harissa, all of these things that just have so much flavor in them. So that's really the concept of that book, is utilizing the things that are really now so readily available that sort of never were. So yeah, I mean, I would say like try some of those ingredients and see where it gets you.
What do you suggest for people who look at an ingredient like miso paste and are a little nervous about it? I've actually ventured out and I bought miso paste for a soup that but like, what do you tell those of us who are like, oh, anchovies? Like,
I will say, first of all, I think anchovies like are the most miscategorized food because people think it's going to be like anchovies when in actuality, it's usually like if you have a tomato sauce and you put in some anchovies, what that's giving you is umami. It's giving you depth of flavor, which is normally, again, what you'd get by browning meat or browning onions. You're not going to taste the anchovy. So I would say to people, give anchovies a chance. But I would also say, think about like what you spend on your Starbucks order. Think about what you spend ordering out. Like you buy miso paste, it might be $6 or $7. You may not love it, right? You might, I mean, listen, we've all had a lot of these things in context. Like a lot of people have had miso soup, maybe not miso paste. If you like miso soup, you're going to like miso paste. Again, it's just an umami delivery, fermented, delicious thing. But like, give it a try, like it's, I think that we often look at stuff and we say like, well, if I don't use it and then I'm, then I'm wasting it. And it's like, well, but what are you spending money on? Otherwise, you would be happy to spend $5 or $6 on, like, trust yourself to say like, if I don't like this, that's okay. I don't think that any of these flavors, like there's nothing in my book that is like super funky, super crazy. I think they're all just delicious without a lot of work. And obviously everyone's definition of that is different. And certainly if you look at 15-minute meal reviews on Amazon, it's very polarizing. Some people are like, I will not use kimchi ever. I hate this book. And it's like, okay, well then maybe it's not for you. And that's fine. Like everyone can have their preferences, but if you're open to trying new things that I don't think are difficult. And I think every single thing is either available in your grocery store or on Amazon. Like there's nothing in the book that you won't have access to. You may not have heard of it. You may not have used it before, but you will have access to it. And that's kind of where I begin.
What I really like about it too is that they're healthy options. And I actually looked at things and I was like, oh, I wouldn't have thought about kimchi in that way. And I think as we get older, we're more apt to be like, hey, I'm going to try that because the flavor profile is going to be entirely different and something that we may not have thought of before. Like I work at a Chinese immersion school. And so I was like, I can't find Chinese five spice anywhere. I'm going to have to order it. And they were like, oh, try here. And I was like, I never would have thought of there, you
Yeah.
know? And
I
so
mean, it's available to us in a way. Like I think that most people haven't, and it really didn't click for me, honestly, until, pandemic cooking, but just the availability of ingredients. And I mean, you talk about like
right,
Chinese five spice, you might have been able to get that from like McCormick in a way that was like maybe not the best version of it. I mean, now there are so many
right.
specialty spice companies that you can get anything, and it's
Yeah,
amazing kind of what you can access. I mean, I love Burlap and Barrel in particular is a great spice company that's in some stores, but mostly direct to consumer. But you can really find, I mean, it's like you start having like their cinnamon and you're like, oh, this is so, this is just adds
yes,
so much more flavor. And so, yeah, I mean, we're just really lucky, I think, to sort of
I
be in
think
this
so too.
era of like great ingredients. So I think we all experiment with a lot of different things. Like I would say, like the best thing you can do right now is experiment with new
Yeah,
ingredients, because we are living in an era where, right, like if you don't think you like kimchi, like now the availability of mild kimchis, I mean, in a way that I know
right.
we have a little human popping up in there, but yeah, I mean, I just, yeah, um, you know, it's I don't know. I have been very inspired by once you start looking,
Yeah.
the quality of certain things. Like I love tinned fish. Like I'm like a canned fish person, and I've just been amazed in recent years, what you can get. I mean, it's really,
Right.
I don't know. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's cool. So, what is your favorite go-to meal? The
I
one
mean,
you could eat a lot of.
yeah. I was gonna say I have to say like Japanese ingredient like
Mm,
soy sauce and miso paste and like lemon are like my favorite thing. So I mean, like noodles or rice and like a stir fry, like, that's kind of my
mm.
fast. I mean, my kids also really love tacos, so that's another good like quick thing. Um, I mean, I'm also like, as you can see in my novel, like I'm obsessed with Italy. So I mean, we eat a lot
Oh,
of pasta.
yeah.
We are a very pasta focused household.
We are
But
too.
yeah, but again, it's like, I mean, my favorite pasta
Yeah.
again was like in my first book, there's like a pistachio anchovy pasta that hilariously everyone's like, I'm not going to like that. And then I serve it to them. And they're like, what is this? This is so good. I'm like, it's those anchovies you hate so much. So, um,
Yeah.
it's,
Y
I mean, yeah,
yeah.
carbs, all the carbs all the time.
Hi, all the carbs. Yeah, matter of fact, tonight I made stir fry for myself, and my son, who's 24, is an Alfredo freak. He will eat Alfredo every night of the week. And so he's like, "Mom, are you done with the pan yet? Because I need it to make Alfredo for me and Grace, my daughter."
But
And I was like, "Okay, you can have the Alfredo because as much as I love it, yeah, but he could eat pasta every single night, so he needs to branch out, and
really
he's
good.
watching he makes the Alfredo from scratch at 24, so
Look at him.
I know, same with taco seasoning, he does it all himself, no little packet, so
That's
I
and
was
that's the biggest health thing. I mean, that is really
yeah,
like those packets are such sodium bombs. If you can, buy like I love ramen noodles, but you always throw away the packets, like make
right,
your own spices, control your own sodium levels. You don't have, yeah, it's like you can make tacos, but with real spices, and it doesn't take that. You can even make your own taco seasoning and store it, in
yep,
an old container, and then you can use that. But yeah, that's sort of the biggest, I think,
yeah, we love that.
barrier for people. Yeah.
And and once you find your seasonings that you really love for things like tacos, you can add it to anything. We do shrimp tacos, we do beef tacos, we do pork tacos. Like tacos are a thing in this house too. So,
Tacos are the
but
easiest, and everybody loves them.
and I love that you can also do lettuce wraps with taco meat. And so, and that, like that's amazing in itself too for healthier things. I love that. What's so I know you said miso, but what is like one ingredient you just have to cook with at least once a week? Is
Lemon.
it the meat?
I mean, I have to say, like, I mean, soy sauce, yes, but I would say that like I would like things to be as lemony as humanly possible. So, and like cheese, like just
Oh, cheese.
yeah.
Mm,
I mean, it's like
cheese.
yeah, lemon
Yeah.
and cheese on anything. I'm very happy. That's like the
Yeah.
simplicity at its best. But yeah, I mean, I also just love ingredients that are like you throw this one thing in and it makes everything better. Like there's a recipe in
Yeah.
15-minute meals that's like ground beef tacos with kimchi. And it's like you
Yep.
literally just put the ground beef with the kimchi and then you cut up some small cucumbers and you put that in a taco shell. And it's so much, I mean, because the kimchi has so much flavor.
Right.
I don't know. I love
Yeah.
any like cheat ingredient.
Yep. I do too. So I did tell my son that I was chatting with you tonight, and he's like, "Oh, what kind of cheese is she putting in her Alfredo?" And I said, "Okay." He goes, "I bet you it's pecorino because I won't buy that for him because he can eat a whole block of grated Parmesan in one sitting." And I'm like, "Buddy, do you know how expensive that is? We're looking at Whole Foods." So he's like, "Ask her, just ask her."
I mean, I have to say, like, I think a good like cost saving that would be like ricotta with like a little bit of feta, because then you still get a lot of
Oh,
flavor, but it's not as, because I agree with you. I mean, I adore pecorino, I adore Parmesan, but they are not the most inexpensive of cheeses. Yeah,
no.
to make a whole cream sauce with them is, but yeah, I mean, I think that like a little bit of feta can go a long way to adding a lot of flavor. And again, it's, and I like the Bulgarian, I mean, this is getting like super deep cut, but Bulgarian feta, I think is actually like more flavorful, has, a lot more, like you can use less of it and get more because it is a bit tangier and saltier. But it's like much cheaper than I think just when it's Greek feta, it just
Right.
becomes more expensive. So
I'm going to tell him that because I never would have thought of ricotta. And I love ricotta
I love ricotta. Yeah.
because you can use it in desserts and you can use it in savory dishes and pastas. And I grew up on my mother's lasagna and it was always ricotta based.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. So good. I miss my mother's lasagna. She's in Arizona, and I'm in Massachusetts. So I miss her food. She's like, "Oh, you made homemade meatballs." And I'm like, "Oh,
You're like,
these are
oh man.
amazing." I know, home cooked food. So you have the 3 cookbooks. Are you writing another one?
Not as of
What's
yet.
next?
It
No?
will be, yeah. I mean, it's all fiction all the time. Cookbooks have a
Yeah,
longer shelf. There's not an
agreed.
expectation that you
Right.
would come out with one every year, kind of in the way that I
Right.
think fiction
Yeah.
readers, especially romance readers, are like, come on. No, I don't.
Right.
It would be a question of like what would it be like? What's the next cooking stage of my life? But
Right. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I will certainly write another cookbook. I have so much fun with it, and there's just, I don't know, there's something to me, like I love social media, I love magazine, all of these things, but there's something about a cookbook that just feels, different.
Well, and they in all reality become generational too, because your cookbooks are passed down from generation to generation. And I'm sure your kids are also at the age where they want to cook with you. And
Yeah.
so that's a big thing too. I mean, it was my son and I for 12 years before I had my daughter, and we cooked everything. And,
Yeah.
he always watched, and my mother was cooking, and that becomes a thing. And we still have my Meme's Falling Apart handwritten cookbook, and my mother's been
I
adding
have
to
all
it.
my grandmother's note cards. Yeah. I mean, it's very
Yeah.
special for me. I mean, like on a personal level, it's like so great that I've written so many of my family recipes into a book and I can just open it up and
Yeah.
have it written down for myself. But it's also,
Right.
yeah, it's very special to be able to know, I'm sort of teaching my kids through my books, and that,
Right.
that becomes very special as well. And, I love the idea that certain recipes speak to certain people and it becomes part of their
Mhm.
repertoire. Like that to me is
Yeah.
the best thing to hear, is just that someone says like, oh, we make this recipe all, it's become a staple in our
Yeah.
house. And, it's so cool to think of like having, being a little piece of somebody's life in that way. I mean, it's just, fiction is the same, but
Mhm.
there's something more communal about cooking, especially with families, in a way that obviously like my son and I cannot share the books that we read. I have no interest in his books and he has no interest in my
Yeah.
books. So, it's,
Exactly, right.
yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about the book. So Jamie introduced me to the book, Recipe for Second Chances, and, here's the book for everyone who has not read it yet, you need to, and I think probably most people that are watching or will be watching, Jamie has said, get the book, it's
Thank you,
amazing.
Jamie.
Um,
And how
so
lucky
I
am I
read
with that cover? My God, they really knocked it out of the park.
And, the thing about it is, like, when you're reading it, I really felt like I was there. The descriptions of Stella eating food and tasting food, and even there's one part where she goes and gets gelato when she's in Italy, for all this wedding stuff.
Yeah.
And I could just imagine her sitting on the stairs, eating the gelato. And like how
Melt.
did you go from recipe books to then wanting to write a romantic comedy? Because like the food part of it, I'm like, and I love that you have the recipes in the back
Yeah.
too.
Too.
Like I love all of it. So
Thank
how,
you.
like,
It was kind of, I think as women, we kind of all have these little pieces of ourselves. We have a career and it's like you become defined by that, but we all have other things that we love. And I've always been such a huge reader. But I never, I never saw myself as a fiction writer. It wasn't like a great dream of mine. And again, it was, God, COVID really did something to me. I was reading a lot of romance. I mean, I've always been a voracious reader in a lot of different genres, which I think is what's really special about your group is that
yeah.
it's not, you're not contained in that way.
Mhm.
But there was like a year where I was like, I have to only read books that have happy endings, and I need this. And I can't.
Yeah.
I was like, I'd always been a romance reader, but I had not been like so. And I was reading so many of these books, and I don't know, it just got in my head. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine in 2021 who also, I met my husband quite young, and she had met her husband quite young, and we sort of got in this conversation about like, it's interesting, like people who are sort of meant to be, if you're meant to be,
Right.
and you didn't work, you weren't ready at the time, like, would people find their way back to each other, and it just became, I'm just going to talk. Guy, will you answer the door? I'm making my son be my door Sherpa. But I don't think they were in the elevator yet. No. Yeah, you got to get on that. Yeah, so, it just I started, like, this story sort of started living with me, and I was like, I'm just gonna write, not because I thought I could sell it, not because, but I was so burnt out. My freezer meals cookbook had just come out, and I don't know, I just had this story that I was like, I think it would be really fun. And I always had, I had a friend who was going to have, I have a friend who's Indian, and she was going to have her wedding in Italy and then decided not to. And so it had always been my dream. I was like, how amazing would it be to go to an Indian wedding in Italy and have that, mashup of cultures. And so I don't know, the idea just sat with me, and I started writing it, and I just was like, oh, why haven't I been like, I love this. Like, it's so like so delightful to get lost in a story and to get to kind of write the books that you want to read. And and I have screaming children, so I was like, oh, to get lost in a romance is just so delightful. And yeah, once I started writing, I was like, oh, I think I like this. And I sent it to my cookbook agent, who of course was like, that's great, nice for you, but I don't do this. So I had to, so it was a whole I had to get a new agent, and I kind of resigned myself to this idea of like, well, it'll either work and somebody will like it, or I'm delusional and I won't. And if it's not, then this was just like a good creative, get your juices going exercise. And I was lucky enough to find an agent who also really liked it. So yeah, so it just, I fell in love. I've always been in love with romance, but I fell in love. And I think there's so many writers that inspire me now. I mean, you look at people like Emily Henry or Abby Jimenez, Tia Williams, Jasmine Guillory. I mean, I think I love classic romance, but I love that there's a lot of now what I would say like women's fiction romance hybrid writing. And that really speaks to me as a reader. Listen, I love all of it. Hey, Guy, will you grab the groceries? Yeah. Alana will be here soon too. But yeah, making my kid do stuff. But yeah, so I mean, I really just wrote a book that was like the kind of book that I wanted to read. And, you know, I think, again, we're like so lucky to live in an era. Yes, you got your cheddar bunnies. You know, where great writers are writing such amazing genre fiction that I think it makes people feel like they can do it too. You know, like I never thought, like I don't take myself seriously as a writer to think like I'm going to write like the great literary fiction of our time. But I'm also like, I don't always want to read that either, you know?
Right.
So sometimes I want a cozy mystery. Sometimes I want a thriller.
Yep.
And I think that the quality of writing in all of those genre categories has just, it's amazing to watch as a reader.
I agree.
So that was inspiring to me.
What I think is really fun about this book too is the friendships that Stella has. Stella's the main character, and that she's so relatable. And I think part of it is like she's got this really cool job that she's playing it safe in. And I think as women that sometimes we do that we don't want to ruffle any feathers for things. And that, I mean, change is scary for everybody.
Yeah.
And so in a book like this, where you immediately get sucked into the setting and the friendships and, you know, her being afraid to tell her friends what really happened because she knows that maybe it was a mistake. We've all lived that. And so even though it is a romance, and I don't want to spoil the end, but it's a great ending, like, she's human that we can all relate to. And that's nice too, because I've read some romance where I'm like, that is not happening. Like, that is over the top, not realistic. Who does that happen to? But this is like what happens with women and how we feel. And then how do you grapple with feelings for things? And I really liked that about it.
Thank you. And it's interesting because when we were going through the editing process, there were a number of moments where my developmental editor was like, she's like, people aren't going to like Stella doing this. Maybe you want to pull it back a little bit, make her, like she's sort of villainous at times, like not on purpose, but and I just, it was funny because I mean, you look at people, I mean, again, I guess I like to write polarizing things, but the people who don't like it, they're like, this woman is so annoying to me. And I'm like, well, I guess that I'm annoying because I also make mistakes. Like we're all human, and and I think the romance genre that I think has improved in recent years, where it's like, both people don't need to be perfect to deserve happiness, and we all make mistakes, and we can have great friendships and keep things from our friends. We can, make romantic mistakes and fix them later. I mean, it's, it's funny because I'm going to some book festivals and they were like, you need to have like a tagline of what your books are. I was like, I don't know, like people pleasers who travel, like, like what is my genre? But I mean, I think for the people who relate to that, it's been very, it's so wonderful when people say like, oh, like I feel that, because I think that there are so many smart, ambitious women who don't necessarily have every piece of their life together. And that's okay.
It is okay. And it's okay to figure it out in the end and say, okay, well, I totally regret that. I just wasted all of this time when I really should have been with the person, right? I mean, we all can relate to that. And, the descriptions of food, I was just like, oh, I could eat all of these things. And I'm really excited because your next book is set in Ireland and I've never been there. I really want to go. And so I was like, ooh, because I have Irish ancestry and I've always been fascinated. So, and I think, I've now been sucked into romance genre because, I even told
Jamie
my girlfriend.
and I have done our work.
You have. Nice job, Jamie. It was funny because I told my girlfriend Nicole, I'm like, Jamie wants me to read romance. And then I was like, oh, I finished that book in 24 hours. So
there's still so much
I
stigma around romance, but
there truly is.
you
And
know, it's not
I grew
all throbbing
well,
members. Much as we love our throbbing
right.
members, and you know, kudos to
Well,
the erotica writers among us, but
I know.
it's
Yeah, I'm
not
not
what
all
I'm
about
going
that.
for.
I grew up in little used bookstores. My dad used to bring them to me here in New England. And growing up in New York, there's lots of used bookstores. And my dad would be like, buy whatever you want. And I was buying Harlequins at like 13. So
Yeah,
that's my idea of romance. And,
yeah.
like,
Which is,
I
yeah,
don't,
and listen, like
you know,
there's space for that. It's I'm very much of the reading, like everyone should read what they want. Like if people can
yep,
watch
me
Real
too.
Housewives, I don't understand why we can't read, escapist, whatever. But I think it's
Right.
okay to
Yeah.
say, I need a little more plot. I need a little more humanity.
Right.
That's for me. Some people just
Yes.
want like, give me some sex scenes with a little bit of plot around it, and I'm super happy.
Right.
Like, great.
Yeah.
Like Harlequin is great at that, but it's,
It truly. Yeah.
I think we're seeing a lot more of that. Yeah, I don't, it's hard to know what it is. It's like that women's fiction romance hybrid um,
Yeah.
that speaks to me as a reader, so I enjoy writing it as well.
Yeah, I like it. I like it as well. And, I read it and I was like, I can totally relate to this whole, you know,
Right.
you make a choice thinking you can't handle it right now, and
Yes. Right. And she
you got to
wasn't
grow.
age. I mean, that's the thing. It's like she was young. I think people sort of have
Hmm.
these expectations as though somebody when they're 20 should make the
Right.
same decisions as when they're 30. It's not realistic. So, yeah, elevator. Yeah. I know. I'm just sending him off to do his thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think yeah, good job. Great job. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I think it's okay to grow and change and
Yeah.
have these flawed heroines, like, and I think
Yeah.
that I don't know, it's funny to me because yeah, I'm not interested in books with women that aren't flawed. So, but yeah, it's like some of my friends will not take my recommendations because they're like, oh my God, these women. And I'm like, well, I love them. I love
I
them.
love it too.
Crazy women.
So, we are in a pen pal group. So, what do you think? We all write introduction letters to each other. And sometimes that's hard. What do you think Stella's introduction pen pal letter would say?
Oh my God, she would just talk about food. She would just talk about like her friends harassing her over cookies and not getting them right and needing to nail them. Like she would be
Yeah.
fully focused on cookies, probably.
That's awesome. I would love that intro letter. My daughter made some cookies the other day and she forgot about them and I thought she ate them all and I found them today. So they were in my lunchbox.
All right, I know. I have a dog. I have a child. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a really
Well, so I don't know if you can see the chat
yeah.
on your side, so I'm just going to go through the chat a little bit. Um, I'm not so Karen said her son is studying in Valencia, Spain right now and is learning to make paella.
Oh,
Kudos to him because that's one thing that has intimidated me too, and a good risotto. And I don't understand why, because risotto in all reality is not, but maybe it's from watching Gordon Ramsay yell at people about risotto.
well, and that's in one of my books I have a recipe called like seafood paella-ish because I was like, I'm not gonna like this is not traditional, like we're not getting like the sofrito at the bottom of the pan and getting that perfect crispy,
Right.
like that is a major skill. But yeah, it's like you can make like your own home version of paella. I mean, yeah, I'd love to set a book in Spain. My next book is in Ireland, and then there will be a third book that is coming that has a London companion. So maybe
Oh,
we'll
yay.
do Spain after that.
How
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
People
I
choose to
love that.
travel. That's really
Well, and we have to live vicariously through the characters because you write in such a way that you truly are sucked into wherever they are. And I'm like, wait, no, you can't leave. You can't go back to college. I like this place.
great. Like keep me in Italy.
I like Italy. I've never been there. I've been to Japan, but not Italy. Come on. Stay
Japan would be
there.
a great rom. Like, yeah, we need better rom-com like hijinks in Japan because I feel like all we have is Lost in Translation, which is not a
Yeah,
romance.
I don't know that there are any set in
I
Japan that
know.
I can think of. So Jamie wants to know if you've been to Ireland. I'm
Have been to
assuming she's
Ireland. Yes. And I'm actually, my best friend who just walked in the door lives in Ireland. So
oh,
Ireland is very special to my heart. And what I love, what I particularly love about this upcoming book is like, it's not, it's really rural Ireland. So, you have a lot of that food, and there's, my friend who's Irish, I made her read it, to be like, is this all accurate? Am I doing it properly?
right.
And she was like, you need a scene in a pub, so there's a great Irish pub time, it's,
Oh, that's fabulous.
yeah,
I think I was there in some other life.
yeah,
I don't know. There's this draw to it. And of course, I know a lot of family history, but I'm like, I must have
the
been there at
most
some point.
beautiful.
I need to get there.
The green, you hear about the green and you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Then you get there and you're like, is it Technicolor? Like, are we living in Oz? It's like that Oz
Uh,
sensation of like, the world now has color, it's just a totally different thing. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's gorgeous. And I mean, there's baby sheep in the book. There's, it's a
Oh,
lot of
nice.
fun Irish stuff. So,
That's awesome. So Karen has a weird question. Did you get to pick the name of your book, and how does that work in the publishing world?
ooh, it's so interesting because you're so on your own for the vast majority of publishing, and then there are things that like 8,000 people will weigh in on. And Recipe for Second Chances went through so many different names that were all so bad and nobody liked. And I don't know how everyone was like, yes, that is a good name, but it took so long. I mean, it was a draft and many names for so long. And Alternate Endings, my next book, it was funny. I sent them like 10 title ideas, and every single person was like, oh, that's a good title, that'll be good. Like marketing, PR, sale, everybody was like, yep. So it is really funny because I think some books like have a title
Right.
from the start, everybody likes it, great, and then there are some that just like are so tortured to get there. And it's the same with covers too. I mean, as an author, you really don't, you have so much control over the interior, but the the title, the cover, the
Mm-hmm.
blurb on the back, all of that stuff, you just, um, you get to have a say in, but it doesn't, I mean, the Alternate Endings cover was so tortured. The name wasn't tortured, but the cover was
Right.
tortured for so long that we eventually scrapped what they had. I mean, and it went on so late. I mean, I think, normally you would see a cover for a book show up online like 9 or 10 months before it comes out. I mean, I think the cover
Right.
for Alternate Endings was like 5 or 6 months. I mean, really
Oh,
just,
wow.
so yeah, I mean, it's funny because there are so many people in publishing that are sitting in a room talking about you and your book, and you are not privy to it. Uh,
Right.
so it's this very weird thing where it's like, and especially, it's one thing with cookbooks where there's not as much emotion attached to it. I mean, in fiction, it's like, it's like, this is like, I'm poor, it's like, I'm revealing all these like, weird twisty pieces of myself and hoping that some
Right.
people relate to it. And it's like, and we're going to like, a bunch of marketing people are going to sit in a room and decide like the font of the title. Like, and you don't, I mean, I mean,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the Recipe for Second Chances cover, the font went on. I mean, it was like the number of emails about the font of the title. I mean, yeah, but it all like ends up where it's supposed to be, and
Yeah.
I'm very lucky. I have a very, I have my agent is so like, is not quiet when something is wrong. So I've
Yeah.
been very lucky to have somebody fight those battles for me, because I think the titles and the covers of both books are just, you know, exactly what I wanted them to be. And I feel like,
Yeah.
we're all guilty of judging a book by its cover, and we expect a certain
We
vibe.
are.
It's like when you look at the
Mm-hmm.
cover, you hope that the interior of it lives up to the exterior of it. And
Right.
sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And
Yeah.
I feel very lucky that I think both books, you see the cover and you kind of like know what you're getting, like you're getting
Yep.
something fun, you're getting travel, but you're not necessarily, that there's a lot of romance where it's like two little cartoon people kissing on the cover. And it's like, this book isn't that, so
Yeah.
I was very happy with the cover choices. And yeah,
Yeah.
and the names. I mean, Recipe for Second Chances, I think well, it's all in the title. You know, I think alternate
Right.
is a little bit more like, you know, a lot of people are like, is it sliding doors? Is it? But it's about a woman getting divorced, and so,
Right.
you know, she's
Yeah.
picking a different path for herself. So it was nice to write a character who is more my age. She has a son who is surprisingly similar to my son. So, you know, she dealt with, you know, with her ex-husband, they went through some fertility stuff, which is, you know, a personal journey of mine that I think is often written about in ways that are sort of a little too magical for my taste. Like it's always like they're going through these things, and then magically at the end, you know, through the sheer power of love, their infertility is gone. And I like,
Right.
so it was very important to me to be like, you know what, it's okay to have problems and still end up happy, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's, you know, but it's the same vibes. It's, you know, perfectly imperfect women who are driven, but need to figure some stuff out
Yeah. Who are
and
human.
travel.
It's nice and get to travel.
Yeah,
Definitely. Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It has been so much fun. And I'm going to tell my son about feta and ricotta, and he's going to be totally intimidated, and I'm going to have to email you.
Yay. Well, now you have me, and yeah, I mean, for anybody on this, I'm very, as you guys saw, I'm a
Yeah.
pretty active Instagram person. So, you
And I
know, if
love
you ever
that.
have, especially cooking questions and thoughts, you know, feel free to jump in my DMs. It's, you
I
know,
love that.
it's such a solitary process writing books, both cookbooks and novels. So I think any author is always really humbled that people, you know, if somebody takes the time to not only read the book, but, you know, share that it spoke to them in some way. Yeah, it's special. I mean, I think most authors feel that way. You know, obviously there are some authors who cannot, but I think I don't know if anybody's been watching Girls Five Eva, which I highly recommend if you want like a silly, funny show. It's about a girl pop group that from the 90s that like tries to come back as
Oh.
middle-aged, you know, as middle-aged women. And so it's really funny, but, and there's a lot of music in it. It's Tina Fey and
Oh, fun. I have not seen that.
really fun. It's on Netflix, but they have a song about the joy of living in the middle, you know, of like not being too successful and not being, you know, a failure. And I sort of am like, I would like as a writer to like just the middle lane of that is so lovely because yeah, you get to talk to people and have real conversations. But it's so gratifying to see people reading the book, you know, so.
I love that. Are you going on book tour?
I'm not doing a book tour because I have small children, but I
I
am. But I am. I'm doing an event in New York right when the next book comes out, um, which I will post about if anyone is interested in that. And then I'm doing a few book festivals. So yeah, I'm doing Book Bonanza, which is like Colleen Hoover's giant book festival, which I'm a little scared of. I'm doing, I'm doing the Columbus Book Festival. I'm doing Romance Con, which is I'm sort of think is going to be fun in September, and then I'm doing Readers Take Denver in 2025.
Oh, how fun.
I'm doing a little festival things, but I'm, you know,
Awesome.
we'll see. I have a much like Stella. I have anxiety, and you know, book events I'm always, you know, I spend like 2 weeks before being like, will anyone show up or will I just be sitting with myself? So, yeah, trying to balance that.
Yeah. Well, I'll watch for that for New York, and then I'll pick up Jamie and we'll come visit you.
Yay.
Because she's actually in Stamford, Connecticut, and I'm in Springfield, Mass, so not
Okay.
overly far. And I absolutely love New York City. Matter of fact, I just went on a work night into the city to see Kristen Hanna talk about her new book.
Um,
And I love every author event, especially for books that I absolutely loved. And even everyone in the group knows that I'm a sucker for signed books and meeting authors that I really love and just
I
talking
love
to them because they're
it.
human. And, I think it's fantastic. Like, at first I was like, Jamie, gave me your name, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's been on TV. She has her own TV show. She's, been in Oprah magazine. what? And then I'm like, I watched some of your interviews. I'm like, it's going to be totally okay.
Yeah, like I'm just a mom
Yeah,
with kids running around in
I
the
love that.
background.
I
Like
love
bring
that.
the equalizer. I mean, but
And
it
I,
it is true. Yeah.
yeah, I just have adored talking with you. So thank you for coming
Thank
on and talking
you.
to us about it. I know Jamie is a huge fan too, and um, we'll have you on for the next book for sure too. And we'll
I
talk
would love it. Well,
about
now
it.
I've
Yeah,
creeped into your group. I would love to see what you guys are
I
reading.
saw it.
And
I actually saw your request come up as an
like, let me
admin. It popped
know,
up on my
lady.
screen, and I was like, oh,
I
there
know.
you
I
go.
was like, let me know what you're reading because
Yeah,
I
a lot of fun.
yeah, it's like I'm always trying to see, I mean, book recommendations. It's funny because yeah, individual book recommendations are always the way to go, because you sort of see what people like, and so it's so special that you guys have a group where you can all kind of band together in that
Yeah,
and recommend new genres and things that maybe you wouldn't otherwise
yeah.
read.
And well, that's the thing too. I mean, as an admin team, I'm a huge fantasy reader, and there's, some of us who are romance readers and thriller readers, and it's, hey, I'm having this author on, or hey, did you see this book? And we all judge books by its cover too. And I'm like, I bought it because it's pretty. I have no idea what it's about, and that's the joy about our group. And, even we have life's troubles, because we all do that, it's this little support system
Yeah.
in there. I'm having a bad day. Everybody send me your good book memes, or,
I know.
what do you want to read for a good, ugly cry,
Right.
because
Or
we
like,
all need that
or like,
sometimes,
I need to escape. So like, give me the best murder mystery you can find.
Yep.
It's unreal. It's, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it really is the magic of books. And when book people come
Yep.
together, it's just, and I think that is why in-person event, I went last week, the Strand had Tia Williams and Kennedy Ryan. And it was like, my heart was so full after. It just felt like, because it's two authors
Mm-hmm.
I love, but they were in conversation with
Yeah.
each other. And it's just, yeah, I mean, and actually this weekend there's a romance podcast called Fated Mates, and they have Christina Lawrence and Kate Claiborne, and they're doing that this weekend. So I'm going to that this weekend, so I also
Oh,
like book
fun.
events. I mean, yeah, I'm a reader first,
Yeah.
at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I love
I
writing.
love that.
I'm a reader. So
I love that. Well, Jamie said we love you, Ali. It's been a pleasure. And Ramona, who's another admin, said she loves murder mysteries too.
I also, a cozy mystery is just sometimes like, it's just like what
Yeah.
you need in a day, it's like, I mean, I don't know if anyone in your group has read the Maisie Dobbs series, but that is like lady detective after World War I. I went through a binge of that in the middle of last year. So if anybody wants like mysteries, historical fiction mysteries, that's a good one. That's my
We have a lot.
non-book rec.
Yeah, I think Ramona does, because I've heard them. I've seen them in the group.
Yeah,
So I'm not
I mean,
sure.
there's so many of them. It's like you can
I know.
binge. But I mean, sometimes that's the recommendation you need, right? Of like, I need a
Yep.
series that has 10 books
Yeah.
that I can just dive into.
And we have to put it on our Wednesday wish list so we get all of them, because if you don't have all of them, then how can you start them? The struggle's real.
Struggle is real, man. It's like,
It
what does the
is.
library have? What does Amazon have? What is,
I
cobbling
know.
together our reading life? But thank
I
you.
know. So, do you have a T? I'm going to ask this before we go.
Yeah.
Do you have a physical TBR at home?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much a Kindle reader.
Mm,
I do. I go to book events, so I do get physical
right.
books when I'm at book
Yeah.
events. But I highlight and I bookmark pages, and I find that's
Me
much
too.
easier on Kindle. And I also
Right.
I love Libby, and I love Kindle Unlimited, and I love Prime Reading. So I sort of get,
Yeah.
but books that I really love, I try to get the physical versions
Yep.
of, because it's like you just, but then. Yeah, I don't know. So I love physical books, but I also love Kindle. And I also I'm a reader. Like there's some books that I go back to, but I really like new stories, So
Me too.
I find one of the things that I really like about my publisher in particular is like my books start out on Kindle Unlimited. So it's not, it's nice to feel like
Yeah.
people can read. I mean, it's so wonderful when people, authors have these books in hardcover and they're doing so well. But I mean, it's for people who read a lot, I mean, it becomes restrictive. So yeah, my Kindle
Expensive.
yeah, I mean, it's just,
It
as much as
does. Yeah.
and So especially as a new author, it feels really special to say to people like, you know, if you want to buy the physical book, it's beautiful. It has a yellow spine. It's a gorgeous book, but yeah, I like that it's accessible as well. Cause again, it's sometimes it's that one day book, and it's like, did you really want to spend $16 on the one day book, or did you want to spend $4 on the Kindle version? Like,
right. And if you love it, like me, I'm a collector. So if I love a book, I'm going to want the physical copy, then you buy it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then if I really love it, then I get multiple copies and stick them in all the little free libraries I can find,
I love yeah. We could talk about libraries all day.
I know. Yeah. I just got my little free library up a couple weeks ago. So it's like this obsession right now. So
good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
important work.
So fun. Well, thank you so much for coming on and taking time out from your family at night. And I love seeing your little one because oh my gosh, it's so funny because I've got my own kids and I teach 8-year-olds all day, but then I'm like, oh,
I know,
like I just want to talk to him about school stuff. Yeah,
oh, he would tell you all about it if you asked him. So yeah,
that's awesome. Well, I hope that we see you in New York for sure.
Thank you.
And
Yeah,
we'll be chatting.
It's going to be May 9th, so, and I'll post about it soon. So yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much.